Hey everybody, Chris here. If you haven't listened to part 1 of this conversation with Maureen Beck, then I definitely suggest that you go back one episode, listen to that before continuing here. In this episode, we sit down in Red River Gorge around a campfire with a couple of bottles of bourbon being passed around and talk all about Mo's trip to the Lotus Flower Tower with fellow adaptive athlete Jim Ewing. Let's get into it.
Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
I think epic is,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody says their trip was epic, but everything went epically wrong on ours, is what it seems like. We flew into Whitehorse and immediately half of our bags are lost, including our haul bag that had most of our climbing gear, bunch of our food, bunch of our cooking gear, a drill and some bolts that we were going to use to fix up the anchors in the tower, just gone. And, you know, I know every airline has this problem, but Air Canada really sucks. Like,
Yeah.
it was a terrible, terrible airline. And the bag turned up a week later in a city that he didn't fly through and by an airline he didn't fly on.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like it was found
Whose
by
bag
like
was it?
Pat Goodman. So
Pat's
he came
bag,
along as our
okay.
rigger. And so he had all of his important, like a lot of important stuff. So like Jim and I were fine. Our bags came through. So like as a party of 2, we could still go climb the tower. But like Pat had the cook tent and Pat had like the rigging gear.
Right.
And so, you know, we ran around Whitehorse, which is actually a really cool town with some phenomenal climbing and a really cool climbing scene. And the locals there, they're just like, take my rack, take anything you need. Like, come sleep on our couch while you wait for the bags to come in. Like, it was really cool.
Did this town also have the giant bear statue that you took photos
No,
of?
that's later.
Okay.
Yeah, that's later. Don't skip ahead.
Okay, let's rewind then. I'll cut that part out.
So in a perfect world, you land in Whitehorse and 2 to 3 days later, you can be in the Cirque, like in your tents, kind of starting your expedition. It took us 10 days to get to the Cirque. So we were in Whitehorse for about 4 days. And then we stayed at the Inconnu Lodge, which is a 6-hour drive from Whitehorse and then about a 20-minute float plane ride. You just kind of sit there waiting for the weather to take the helicopter in.
Yep.
And then what we didn't know before we left was that they're having such a terrible forest fire season out there that even though we had paid a $5,000 deposit in the helicopter, there were no helicopters for us.
Oh, shit.
So I think we had to wait an extra 2 to 3 days for a helicopter to finally, like,
How many
gorgeous
days
weather.
are allotted for the trip?
So we, door to door, I flew August 2nd and August 30th.
Okay. So you're already 1/3 of the trip in, just sitting away.
So like best case scenario, we're going to be 21 days in the Cirque was kind of what we were planning for. And right off the bat, we were 10 days before we actually got there.
Yep.
But once we got there, and then actually in the Inconnu Lodge has a myriad of stuffed animals just scattered around the forest, as well as real grizzlies. So we're stuck at this lodge. The weather's terrible, and we flew in there, so there's no roads. You can't just like go into town. All you can really do is watch Fox News because it's the only channel they get.
Oh, great.
In Yukon Territory, Canada. And you couldn't even fish. It was too raining. And I thought, oh, well, I'll go up to the airstrip and run or something. And they're like, yeah, but you need to bring a buddy with like 2 cans of bear spray and the muzzle loader. I was like, all right, guess I'm not running. Pass on that. So it was just ultimate boredom. Like one night we just decided to drink until 4 a.m. until the sun came up because we're just like, well, we'll be so hungover tomorrow that will kill the day. That's one less day we have to wait.
Yeah.
Like that's just how bored we were. Like I learned how to play cribbage. I learned how to play chess. Like it was just ultimate boredom. I would so much rather be stuck in my tent in the rain because at least you feel like you're somewhere and you started a trip, but to still
Right.
just be kind of on the cusp of civilization,
Yep.
just waiting for something.
No roads in or out.
No, it was, that was rugged. But we finally got in after 10 days. And that was my first helicopter ride. And I've been in small planes before, but a helicopter is kind of like being in a Christmas ornament that a cat is bopping around. Like you're making forward motion, but the thing is just like moving on some weird axes that
Right.
I was really concerned I was going to vomit everywhere. Like it was beautiful and it was fun. It was amazing, but I definitely and then when we got to the Cirque and we saw the tower for the first time, I kind of like shat my pants a little bit. It's big and formidable and on top of a glacier. And I just thought, wow, I knew I was out of my league on this trip, but now I really know that,
middle of nowhere, pain in the ass getting there, and then this giant fucking wall.
Yeah, 2,000 feet of just granite.
Yep.
So we start 10 days late. The very next day was the last weather window for about a week. And we just knew we're not going to be able to, off the couch, essentially, like fire off this climb. And we also find out there are 6 other parties that were going to climb it that day.
Same
route. Yeah. Which is kind of insane for how remote it is, but it has gotten really popular in the last 10 years or so. And so we just thought, you know what, have at it. Like, we'll sleep in, we'll wait for the next window. And we actually decided to just go up and do the first pitch, like once the other parties had lifted off. And this is supposed to be one of the top 50 climbs in North America, one of the classics. And the first pitch is 5.8. And I usually like taking the first pitch just to get get things rolling. But, this was Jim's dream. And so I told him, like, you take this pitch. It looks wet as hell, but like kind of fun. So this is your dream. Take the first pitch. And I knew we were in trouble when he just started dumping gear in. It was taking forever. Jim is a very fast, old school, efficient leader. So like his alpine rack is actually like 4 cams and a set of nuts.
Right.
So when he starts dumping gear in, I'm like, oh, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. This entire mountain is just falling apart. So like it is classic. It is beautiful. But out of the 18 pitches, maybe 4 are actually good. The rest was just a choss pile. Like you would go to grab a jug and the jug would come off in your hand and you have to like pat it back into place. And like you were just placing 30 feet of pro that would never hold in a fall.
Yep.
And I'm like shoving my stump into cracks, trying to get purchased, and they're coming out just green and covered in water.
Oh man.
And so our initial goal was to free it in a day. And we were going so slow. We're like, this is not going in a day. And we can't even free this. It's so wet. Like, I had to learn how to aid climb, like on the ground there.
Which might be more boring than sitting in Whitehorse.
Yeah, it was pretty rugged. So we also didn't bring anything.
Boring and terrifying all at the same time.
It was so scary. And we didn't bring anything to aid climb. So we were just doing clean aid, but like we didn't have aiders. Right. We didn't have like anything to make it remotely easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took pitch 3, and it's actively raining at this point. We're just trying to fix ropes so that when we do get a weather window, we can just, in theory, jug and be on our way. I'm just trying to place gear in this crack, and every time I reach in, the water just pours down my jacket sleeve and like into my mouth, and the cracks are all moss lined. So like I remember distinctly placing this number 4, which is normally a very like friendly, fun size. Like you can tell when that cam is good, and it looked good. And it just sheared out with the moss. Like all the moss came out with it. And it was terrifying. And that was my first ever aid pitch.
Oh, God.
And then when it came time to jugging, because we didn't bring anything, the first pitch Jim jugged was with a prusik and a gree-gree. And then he figured out, I think he managed to borrow an actual ascender from someone in camp. So then he had an ascender and a gree-gree to do about 300 feet of jugging.
Right.
2 pitches of which were free hanging.
To this point, were there times where you were like, I should have just stayed in Denver and trained for World Championships? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Because it was still fun in a sick way.
Mm-hmm.
Because in between those efforts of fixing pitches, we had a 5-day stretch of just tent time. Like there might be a cut down in the drizzle where we could go for a little bit of a walk. But it was just tent time. And I kind of liked it. Like I found out I can nap for however long I need to.
I need that skill.
If it's like, hey, nothing's going on today, I'm like, cool. I'll be in my tent 12 hours from now. So
were you on separate tents?
We were, and that was totally worth the extra weight and extra everything.
Yeah.
Like there's 4 of us in our party total, and that was definitely the sanity.
I like Pat,
keeper.
but I'm not sure I could share a tent with him for 5 days.
I spent a lot of time with Pat, and I'm also glad that we had our own tents. And we had a shared cook tent, so we had some social space, but
cool.
Even that was a mess. There's a couple prime spots that stayed right under boulders, and it was so crowded we didn't get that. So we were just out in the middle of the field, exposed, had this kind of like tarp city tent thing for our cook tent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can nap like a pro. I read a lot of bad sci-fi, played a lot of cribbage and chutes and ladders, and I kind of dug it. Like it's still when you could look at your tent, like my tent just faced the Lotus Flower Tower.
Right.
And it was so cool. So maybe because it was my first trip, even though it was a lot of downtime, I was still just kind of in awe of even being there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty incredible.
Yeah. So you're you've got the first 3 pitches fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get a weather window to
We finally
push?
do. We kept thinking we were getting one, and then it kept pushing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Friday's gonna be sunny. Now Saturday's gonna be sunny. Now Sunday. So we finally went up. I think a week after we first got there is when we were like, let's do this. And at that point, we knew we were gonna bivvy on the wall. I had never bivvied before. I didn't bring bivvy gear. Again, we packed according to this plan of trying to free it in a day.
for sure. And you almost have to, otherwise you just end up
With too
packing
much,
for
yeah.
every possible scenario.
Yeah, and we made do. So we were lucky that, Pat, while he was rigging the fixed lines for the film guy, Taylor, he was able to at least bring all the food and water up to the bivvy ledge so that Jim and I only had to bring our like personal gear. But even that, like I had never jugged a pitch, period, before this trip.
Never.
Never.
No practice in the gym, nothing.
No, because we weren't supposed to. I even asked, like,
Where the hell did this rule come from? We weren't supposed to.
So this spring, I was like, hey, Jim and Pat, because Pat's been up there a bunch. I'm like, what skills do I need so I can, contribute to the team? Like, do I need to learn how to haul, blah, 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 and jugging. I specifically said, do I need to practice jugging? And Pat was just like, no way, we're going to free the sucker. And I was like, all right, cool, sweet. One less thing I have to do.
Yeah, Pat, you fucking say
Yeah, he did. So not only am I jugging for the first time, like with a full rack and I think a spare rope, for the actual summit attempt, I had a backpack that was like a 50-liter pack with 2 sleeping bags.
Mm-hmm.
And just, it was suffering.
Sounds like suffering.
Yeah. And then we actually started climbing, and pitch 4 is where we started free climbing, and it was horrific. Just picnic-sized table flakes that looked fine, and they would just start shifting under you. And it was 5'7", but it was still steep, and it was just like, yeah, on top rope, I was terrified.
Now, I know Pat's been up there a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ask him if this was normal? Had something changed? Was there some strange freeze-thaw cycle?
No, the only thing that had changed was the crowds.
Gotcha.
It's a really old mountain range.
So Pat knew it was a choss pile going in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally. And you read that it is, but it doesn't really sink in.
Right.
Because when you look at photos of the tower, all you see are those
it looks
beautiful
amazing.
railroad splitter granite.
Yeah.
And it's not. Those pitches are there, but most of it is just terrifying loose choss. Pitch 5 was pretty good. It was kind of fun, like sporty climbing.
Mm-hmm.
But then you move into 4 pitches of chimneys. Of a chimney, single chimney is 4 pitches long. And it gets wider and wider and wider. And again, it's 5'7", but I have this giant pack on, and at this point, It's getting dark. And these are full pitches. Like Jim would call down at like 62 meters of rope on our 70 meter. They were full pitches. And he ended up leading them all because I was just so gassed. So I took the giant pack. He still had a big pack of like 4 liters of water himself. And I remember on that last belay, that's when I finally was just like, this sucks. Like, I'm wet. It got wide enough to do a true chimney where your butt's on one side, your feet's on the other. And as I'm doing that, tagging my pack, water is just pouring down my butt crack. Like, it is just not fun. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. It's still light out. But at that belay, I was just like, this is not fun at all. Like, I didn't cry, but I got close to the first time I ever cried while rock climbing. And it was just utter like despair, I think.
And you didn't go into this thinking it was going to be a sport climbing trip, so
no, and I knew there would be some suffering, but it was
just
just
somewhat mentally prepared already.
The level of fun was much lower than I had anticipated. And then the last pitch to the baby ledge, there's spots where you're just like digging your nails into mud because it's a grassy, like steep slope with no gear, and it's awful. But then I pulled up onto the ledge. They had a hot dinner waiting for me, and the ledge is huge. You just kind of tie it around your waist and relax. And, we fell asleep. It was the best night of the entire trip. It was like 50 degrees, not a breeze. Stars are out, northern lights are out. And so we fell asleep, and I was just like, but the whole time you're staring up at the head wall. And I thought, okay, well, oh, sure, whatever.
Where on the wall at this point are you? Like
this is
halfway?
About 9 or 10 pitches up. So a little more than halfway, but the money pitches were next. So, the first half, the hardest pitch is 5'8". So above us was a bunch of pitches of 5'9", the crux pitch at 10 plus, some more 8s and 7s. But we went to bed thinking, that sucked, but at least now we won't have the packs. We should be able to like switch over to fast and light and just kind of blitz this. Yeah. Was the thinking.
And then weather does what?
The weather was
Stay okay?
phenomenal.
Okay,
Weather was
good.
beautiful. Jim woke up with a stomach virus.
Oh, fuck.
And we wake up and he looks at me and he's like, I don't feel good. And I was just like, oh, no, that's nerves. Like, you're fine. And then we knew he was going to take the first block of about 5 pitches because it was just too thin for me to like get a stump on anything and place gear.
Sure.
And he got 1 pitch up and then just started vomiting while he was climbing.
Oh, no.
And just like total systems collapse. And so I already wasn't having that much fun. And now I have my partner, like we're on, and it's hanging belays at this point too now.
Right.
So he's like, we're passing gear back and forth and like hey, can you pass me the number? And he just has to like turn over and like puke on the other, like, yeah, if he had actually puked on me, I probably would have quit climbing. Like that would have been it.
Yeah.
But eventually he switches.
Do we have this on camera?
Sadly, no.
Oh,
because the camera guy Taylor, he had been held back by the weather like us, so they were trying to race ahead to fix pitches for him to film on, which worked for a bit because we were moving so slow. And he eventually switched to aid. He was just like, I'm just too sick to actually like make free moves. And he's so shaky and pale and clammy. I just felt so helpless. I was like, I wish I could just take the rack and fire this off for us, but I can't. Like, I cannot climb. I can't lead this.
Right.
So he switched to aiding. And those gorgeous railroad track photos you see that look like just total splitter, they're not. It's really thin, really flared, really shallow. And
like
I'm getting
things.
hit by clumps of moss. Like he's chiseling out this nut tool so he can place micronuts. Like,
yep.
So you're actually face climbing these really cool, fun knobs, but they're slick. And I'm in these big, sloppy, comfy all-day shoes that I'm not used to. Just wishing I had my sport climbing shoes to just like laser in on these knobs. But so finally we reached the fixed lines that the film crew had set, and that's kind of when we just bailed on our attempt to do it. Like just Jim and I. So Jim switched to jugging and they had left us a pair of jugs. And so Jim would jug the pitch, put me on top rope, and I would just follow it. So I got to climb a lot. I was just able to relax, top rope stuff.
Yeah.
And we did get to the pitches where I would have been comfortable leading, but by that point it was like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we were like, let's just get to the top. So we cruised as much as possible. I switched to jugging in the crux pitch because there's this roof and I was so exhausted. I was still exhausted. We maybe had a liter of water between the two of us over 2 days, not enough food. And the last thing I wanted to do was punt on top rope under this roof and just be stuck.
Yep.
So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to jug the rest of this thing. So we ended up jugging the last 3 pitches. And the final pitch was another horror show. Just 5-7 sliding picnic tables. Grossness. Jesus. And Jim is vomiting the whole time. It's not like he cleared it out of his system and was good. He was just still puking the entire time. So I finished first. I got to top it around 7 at night. I bring him up. And we're actually too exhausted even to go to the proper summit. We got to the summit anchors and we're just like, get us off.
Yeah.
And we had to wrap because the pitches are such full rope lengths. You're actually making 17 wraps. It's not like a normal climb where you do 10 pitches and 5 wraps. This is a full 17 wraps.
Right.
And it got dark fast. I was the only one who had a headlamp or someone had an emergency headlamp, but we had left the rest of the gear at the bivy ledge thinking we'd be done well before then. And it got dark before we got there. Jim overshot an anchor, so he fortunately had the rack with him, so he just like built himself an anchor and then was just alone on the wall until we were able to wrap past him on the second wrap. We started, knotting our ropes like you're supposed to, and they just immediately got sucked into these giant fist cracks at the top. And I remember hanging there just like, and we didn't have a knife because Pat left the summit early to try to clean up some of the rigging, and I'm not sure why he left early, but he took the knife with him, and we didn't know he had the only knife. So I just remember hanging on wrap, delicately trying to fish these ropes out of these cracks, thinking, and I can see the knot, and I'm like, please, please, please. Like, there's nothing I can do if these get stuck. And they came out, fortunately, and then we get to the bivy ledge, so now we all have, but Pat forgot to leave us water, so we still don't have any water. We have our headlamps now, but now it's totally dark, and we start missing wrap stations. Jim had the most alpine experience by far, probably the entire group. And so we're just like, hey, even though you're sick, I think you should still go first because you're the most likely among us to be able to, like, in the dark, find these wrap stations and just kind of know the way. And he did great until he missed a station. And these wraps are all so long, it always looks like they're gone forever. You just see the headlamp just kind of disappear below you. And you can't even hear them. It's a very faint, off rappel. Like, It's kind of terrifying. And he missed one station and I didn't realize it until I was about 20 meters above him. And he goes, all right, so here's the thing. You're going to have to wrap off the end of one of your ropes and catch this thing. Where he's going to toss me a length of cut tat he had found to tie into, and then I would wrap off the end of my ropes onto the anchor station.
Oh, shit.
But by this point, I was like, sure, whatever.
Can't get any worse.
Why not? And when we missed that station, we actually missed, when Pat retreated off, he fixed something like 6 of the wraps on fixed lines. So we could just zip down them on our gree-grees, but we missed that. No. So we're still doing manual wraps with 3 of us. And we're just going one at a time. We're not simul wrapping. I don't know why we weren't simul wrapping. Like,
were you wrapping down a different line?
At a certain point, yeah, because to avoid the chimneys, you go, so the top half you wrap the route, but then the bottom half, you don't want to, the chimneys are choss.
Stay out on the face somewhere.
So there are different wrap stations. And all the books just say, find the wrap station inside the bivy ledge and go down. Like, there's not a ton of guidance out there. So,
yep.
So we finally do find the top of a section of fixed line, look up and see the rest of it. We're like, oh crap, that cost us like 2 hours. But by the time we reach the fixed line, it is just zip, zip, go. Like, I've never gotten down 3 pitches faster in my life. And I think my boots were on the ground at 2:30 in the morning. And my legs were acting like they're attached to a drunk lady. Like, I was so dehydrated, so underfed, and I've been like...
But your legs are fairly used to that, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well, and it's a scree field. It's a scree field, too. So it's like, not only are they not working, but like, you're just surfing scree. And yeah, and like, and you spent like better part of 2 days just hanging in your harness. And like, you know, I had a comfy big ball harness, but there's only so much they can do, like, after that much, you know, and especially 3 of us wrapping together. When you're out the wrap station, you're just like uncomfortably close. We hadn't showered in 2 weeks. And so yeah, just getting down. And then what should have been a 45-minute hike back to camp took us 2.5 hours. Jim's stump had pretty much just exploded into an abscess from just being in a socket, being hit by a socket. And we were about a mile from camp when he was just like, I have to take off my leg. And he took it off, and the first thing I heard him say was, oh God, I can smell it. So that was pretty brutal. And the worst part about this is we get back to camp. Pat waited up for us. He felt really bad for leaving us and had panicked when he looked up and saw our headlights. We were still like 7 wraps off the deck. He was like, you guys took forever to wrap. And we said, we know. We know it took forever.
We were there.
It sucked. But we went to bed at like 5 a.m., but the sun rose like 30 minutes later.
Right.
And so you're just lying there in a hot tent, and it ended up being 2 more gorgeous days of weather after that. But we still had to hike back up and get our gear, because when we got down, we were just like, I'm not carrying an 80-pound pack out right now. Like, we dropped our packs, dropped our racks, dropped our gear, ropes, just took like water and a layer back to camp. So then the next day we had to rally and hike the 2.5 miles back up. Load, and Jim couldn't walk, so we had to take his stuff too. So we probably had 80-90 pound packs out the scree field. And I thought that was hard. Like, I thought that whole experience was the hardest thing I'd ever done. This, you know, the summit was bittersweet because it wasn't the style we wanted.
Sure.
Jim was still vomiting everywhere, but you know, Jim's dream was to do the whole all adaptive free in a day. And for me, the more things that went wrong, the more I learned. So for me, it was a better trip, probably. Like, the suffering was greater, but I learned way more.
Yeah.
You know, when we were down, I thought that was the hardest thing I'd ever done until we hiked out. So we took the helicopter into the Cirque, but the plan was to hike down to Glacier Lake, which is 4 miles, like 2 miles straight down and then 2 miles across a grizzly-infested bog, is how it was described to me. And
how long did Jim have to rest his
He was out for a day and a half.
Stump before he had to hike
So he
out?
actually still, it's now, that was end of August, it's now end of October, and he still has to syringe drain this abscess.
So he just had to hike out with it.
He had to deal. We actually thought about, you know, he has the whole global rescue thing through the Alpine Club, and we were just like, man, maybe we should just use your insurance and get you a helicopter out of here, and while they're here, put all of our shit on it so they don't have to carry it.
Yeah.
But you know, he's pretty stubborn. He wouldn't do it. You know, he's actually ashamed of the fact that he was puking on the whole climb. He was like, don't tell people that, you know, I'm not proud of that. And I'm like, dude, that is the most badass thing I've ever seen.
It's pretty badass.
That you were like, had a fever, vomiting, and you were still like, we're going to get to the top. Like, I'm going to claw my way to the top. Like, brag on that for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's just a human thing. Like, I've been sick here for 2 weeks and I'm complaining like I'm a 3-year-old child, you know, probably worse than a 3-year-old child. So, you know, when you're when you're up on a wall and if you get sick, it's not like you chose it. It's not like you made the decision to bail or something. It's what's happening to you.
And I told him he should. There was a point where I was like, man, I can't lead. Like, we're not that close. Like, now you save a fever, we should bail. But in the back,
and no one would say anything.
But he was
bad
doing the
about
math
it.
where it's like, our drop dead date of getting out of here is like the 27th, and it's the 20th, and we know there's another week of bad weather coming in. So this actually is our only shot.
He had this dream.
Yeah. So he dug deep. So he hiked out once, and we all had these like horrible overloaded packs. Like mine never broke 100, but everybody else's definitely broke 100 for each trip they did. And it's 2 miles straight down, 2 miles across, an awful trail. And I did that hike twice in a day, like empty pack up, loaded pack down, and like my knee exploded. I'm covered in bug bites. Oh, there was bees, like ground wasps at one part of the trail.
Yep.
And like
horrible little things.
Yeah, like the Belgians were just like, oh, be careful when you hike down. Like there's the bees. And we totally forgot about it until all of a sudden Taylor just goes, what's that buzzing? And we're just covered in bees. And we never did see a bear.
Just a Pat Goodman shaped horde of bees chasing you.
Yeah, it was awful. And like Pat taught me, he's like, okay, once we're down below tree line, every 5 minutes, blow your backpack whistle so the bears know we're coming. And at that point, I was just like, wow, I'm really out. Like, no, this is not, no. And so, the climb was hard, the hardest thing I'd ever done until that hike. Right. And the hike was just necessity. Like, we had to get out. We had our float plane pick up. Like, we had to leave. But it hurt a lot.
How soon after the trip did you and Jim start talking about going back?
He was pretty keen on right away.
Yeah.
And actually, I was too. Like, while we were there, while we're still, back at the lodge and back in Whitehorse, I was just like, man, that was cool. And now that I know what I'm in for, I want to do it again. I was kind of hoping I'd hate the whole thing so much that I would just check alpine climbing off my list because I have too many hobbies. But I actually had so much fun. And being on an expedition, like, there's such a purpose to it. Like, every morning you wake up and you either do task A or task B. Like, if it's sunny, you do this. If it's rainy, you do that. It's all, even shuttling loads I liked. It was just really fun to just be like this machine-like operation. But the further away from it I get, I think, okay, I learned a lot, and I'm bummed we didn't get the summit the way I wanted, but I would rather take these skills and apply them elsewhere. Maybe go to the Bugs, maybe go to the Dolomites, just like maybe Patagonia, but someplace else.
Places that aren't quite as chossy.
Not as chossy, yep. Cheaper to get to, maybe. Like, it's, it's an expensive trip. I think just between the helis and the float planes, it was like $11,000. Yeah. So I'm very fortunate I didn't have to pay for it, but man, without the heli, we would have had to do the awful hike up. Right. But kind of because of the heli, we had too much crap to hike out. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Jim still wants to go back. But I think I actually saw him on this road trip, and I kind of broke it to him that I don't think I'm as stoked to go back as he is. Yeah,
he's still gunning for the all adaptive free ascent.
He wants it, but I think now he'd rather do like he really wants to do Astroman.
Oh, nice.
Now that he's sans a leg and stuff, and wants to sick me on the corner pitch. We'll see. Yeah. But yeah, no, Jim is good for me. He really comes up with crazy ideas and actually does them.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Is this your first like partner who's just put it all out there that way, or is that just something you're used to already?
He's probably my first mentor, I would say.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny because I've been climbing for so long, but he's the first person that has been climbing hard for decades. He helped write the book on anchors. He designs climbing ropes. Like, right. I can ask him any stupid question and he never treats it as a stupid question. And like, I think even after 20 years of climbing, everybody will still have stupid questions. Sure. And yeah, he has really taken me under his wing, and I know he's not going to kill me. Yep. So, that's one of the reasons I even accepted this trip, was that it was him as the partner.
He might make you miserable.
He warned me of that. He's like, this could really suck. And I was like, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, cool. How quickly, once you were back, did you have to start switching your brain over to World Championships?
I didn't even have time. I was so wrecked from the trip. I think I got home on the 30th of August, and September 7th, we flew to Austria. And I was just like, I think I did one day in the gym just to remember how to climb in plastic. But I was I was down 10 pounds, not in a good way. Like, right. My legs are really strong, but like not, it was so wet. Like, I guess I went into the trip thinking, oh, if it's raining, I'll still do like core and push-ups and like maybe hang the flashboard somewhere. And it didn't happen. Sure. Like, I don't know how people can do that, but it just didn't happen. So I went in, knowing I was probably in the worst case scenario shape. So I got third, which I expected. I think that what's really cool though is this new girl on the scene is so strong that even if I hadn't done the trip and I had thought I trained really hard, she still would have beat me.
Who's the new girl?
Yeah, her name is Celine and she's French. And it's kind of funny because she started rock climbing after she had seen my film pretty much. Or like she had, like 5 years ago, she had Facebooked me and been like, oh, I'm a one-arm climber also from France. Like, do you have any advice? And I gave her whatever advice I had. And then she got...
Now you're wishing you would have given her
I know,
advice.
Right? And then I guess like she was like, oh yeah, I saw your film 3 times while I was training for Worlds. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. And she's so stupid strong that I don't think I was ready for that level. Like, it's kind of cool that even if I hadn't done the Alpine trip, that she would have beat me anyway. And so now, I mean, I guess that's some of the reason why I'm not super hot to go back to the circuit right away. Because now I kind of want to be done with international comps.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was going to ask because, you talked when we spoke at OR about moving into this coaching and mentorship role and how excited you were for that. Did this feel like an exit of sorts? Were you...
So it kind of did. So we had a massive team of 30 plus athletes and I was so proud of how the whole team did. And I probably spent more time like thinking about the team than my own like focus on the comp. But maybe knowing that I wasn't in great shape helped me kind of just write off the comp a little bit. But Celine really motivates me. Like I want it to be done this year. But instead I am going back next year. I'm as signed up as you can be this early for Tokyo. My whole goal for the next 10 months is just to be as strong as I can be. And you know what? Honestly, I might still get second. Like I could be a full-time training comp climber and she could still beat me because she's so strong.
That's a really good place to be, actually.
I think it's cool. Yeah.
I was at a comp years and years ago with my daughter when she was competing, and a friend of ours who should have been in the elite category had just entered in advanced, and I was sort of chastising her a little bit for sandbagging, and my daughter, who at the time was like 8 years old or something, was like, well, if you know you're gonna win, what's the point of competing? And I mean, it's true. It's not really a competition at that point. So having Celine out there driving you and knowing I might get second, I might go in the best shape of my life and still get second. I think that's a pretty fucking cool place to be.
Well, and I've never been more motivated because like, I've always trained for comps, but like, I mean, I think that's what this whole year taught me is I've always tried really hard and had success. I've had so much success, whether it was the project and the film was success, like 2 world championships. And this is the first year that things just didn't work out. Like I trained my ass off for the circ and we didn't get the summit like we wanted. I thought I was training pretty hard too for Worlds and I just didn't pull it off. So it's like 2, I guess, losses, but they've left me more fired up than ever. Yeah. So no, it's not going to be a quiet exit at all.
Okay, good. That makes me happy. But you're still going to continue the mentor coaching role.
Yeah,
I assume,
I really
you want
am.
to do everything
I swear
at
I
once.
really am done after Tokyo. I promise.
Okay. I'll believe it when I see it. We'll check back in after Tokyo.
Well, I just from a training perspective mostly because I'm just really jonesing on outside climbing.
Yeah.
And it's still hard. Like even if I'm climbing outside sport, in the back of my head I'm like, oh, but I should be doing this kind of thing at the gym because like to train for comps you have to be in the gym.
Yep.
And even if it's like winter training in the gym for outside climbing, it's different than it's just, I'm fortunate that the comp scene is getting so competitive that I can't just coast anymore and I can't have it all. Like it's getting to a point where I have to pick and choose. And I think that's great.
Yeah. I'm glad you worded it that way. I'm glad you said you're fortunate that it's switching to being more and more competitive.
Yeah.
And you can't just coast through.
Yeah.
So I think there are still some people trying to coast. It's not working out for them.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of means you're selling yourself short on all of the aspects.
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, like this road trip now that we're on, we're at the end of it, and I feel like I'm finally remembering how to rock climb.
After 8 days on.
Like we hit so many great areas, and I'm like, this is great. I'm gonna come back next year when I'm actually in shape.
Yeah.
Because this year is kind of all about sacrificing everything for everything else, and I'm looking forward to being able to focus for sure.
Cool. All right, well, I'm looking forward to it too. Can't wait to see what happens next. So thanks for sitting down with me again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a little disappointed in all you guys for not heckling and throwing things in. So,
I mean, like,
you need new friends.
you
Mo.
guys, I got puked on.
You need worse friends.
Let's be real.
I just want to comment about how you're saying you didn't shower for 2 weeks, but you had water going down your ass crack. So at least.
Yeah, I had nature's glacial bidet for like.
Oh my god.
Cool. Well, thank you a ton.
Thanks, Nate.
While I was at CWA, I got to sit down and watch a screening of Adaptive, the film that was made while Mo and Jim were climbing on Lotus Flower Tower. And while I think it really conveys the idea of adapting, obviously, and it also touches on, the limits of the human spirit and how far we're willing to go to complete these objectives that we create for ourselves. I think it also is a really great examination of what it means to have someone on your team who's willing to push really hard for your goals and make them their own. And I know from watching the film that I would love to have Mo on my team at any time. And really, I think that's what it comes down to, whether it was Jim on Lotus Flower Tower or the adaptive athletes that she works with and helps. I think she's in it for everyone else's best interest as well as her own. I heard rumor that she has either very much slowed or stopped her notorious partying ways in order to really buckle down and train for the Adaptive World Championships, which I think is really, really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. It's practically a dynasty, and honestly, I root for dynasties. I know some of you like the underdog, not me. I'm a dynasty guy all the way. Like I mentioned in the previous episode, you can find links to Mo on the internet right there in your pocket supercomputer in the show notes. Also, if you navigate your way to our website for the post about this episode, you'll find links to other films that she's been involved in, her National Geographic article for being Adventure of the Year for 2019. And once you're there, of course, check out our new spring tanks, which will be there in a couple of days after this comes out. So probably by the time you're hearing it, those are there. If they're not already sold out, make sure you get yours before that happens. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and the Pinterest at Power Company Climbing. You can search for us all day on Twitter. You can find Mo's posts from 2017 on Twitter. But as it goes now, we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, 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 power, power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power. 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 This time to build. 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 This time.
With us just standing there, and she's like, "Don't worry, my granddaughter loves that song," and like walked off. And I was like,
"Oh my god!" Okay. But she was your classic like Southern prep, like she had the riding boots on and like.
And she was really drunk at that point.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The problem is just like nobody
went up
else
to her and was
knows
like, "What's the
that
difference between
song
jam and
except for
jelly?"
Mo.
I've never heard of this
And
song.
she's doing this baby shark,
Yeah,
like
see, I
don't know what this
craziness,
is.
and we're like,
I don't know.
what?
Oh yeah, and I'm in the background, one cocktail deep. I'm like, I know this song.
Mo's dancing on the table.
Mo, you should sing us a song because I think at least half of us have not heard it before.
I've never even heard of it.
It's participatory. If I just sit here singing it, it wouldn't be as good.
Wait, what's the
Walk us through it.
participation part?
Everybody has to do it.
Okay, go ahead.
We're in.
It's really easy to pick up on. So
Hold that
basically-
mic up while you do this.
I wondered if the red light was on. So the story here is there's a family of sharks, and we're gonna walk through all the family members.
Oh, wow.
Starting with baby shark, do 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 do, baby shark, do 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 do, baby shark. You gotta do the hand motions, do 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 do, baby
You have to
shark.
do the hands.
And then it's like mama shark is bigger, daddy shark is bigger, and then my favorite is grandpa shark because you bring your fingers in because he doesn't have any teeth.
You don't have any
He's
teeth.
like grandpa.
Poor grandpa shark.
And then
Did she get to Grandpa Shark on the
No,
porch?
It was just baby shark.
But
for
she was
15
like,
minutes.
she was like making the shark motion. Like she did
it was-
daddy shark in place of baby shark. Like she did daddy shark motion.
Yeah.
Wow. But only
Baby
said
shark's supposed to be
baby
the one.
shark.
Just baby shark.
But it gets really dark because then the whole family sees a swimmer. Like sees a swimmer, sees a swimmer. And there's a shark attack. And then it's like lost a leg, and you're hopping around on one leg, and it's like lost an arm. I'm not even kidding. Like as I was singing this song at the distillery, I was like, huh, this is really dark actually. Never thought about this when I was 9, but these sharks like eating the swimmer until you're just like on your knees and you're just like, swimmer's dead,
Oh my God.
Swimmer's dead. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this is Girl Scout camp. So
Wow.
What do we do to our children?
I mean, I turned out okay, I think.
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah.
This didn't affect you at all when they got to the
no, I think I thought it was cool
Eating an
because
arm
I think I
part.
wore a prosthetic at that point. And I would just like pop it off and wave it around like, ah.
totally happened to be a shark.
Yeah, 100%.